Erev Shabbat, Parashat Chayei Sarah. It's almost a week since the leader of not only of Anglo Jewry but of world Jewry, Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks, was taken from us so cruelly, so young, so before his time. There have been many Hespedim from kings, princes, rabbis, chief rabbis, leaders. It doesn't need anything for me to add, but nevertheless, I feel that I want to add something, perhaps a little story that nobody else, or almost nobody else, will know, to demonstrate the greatness of Rabbi Sacks. Ravido wanted to join me in this tribute, but unfortunately he's a little under the weather today and has left it to me to do. I was thinking about the Sedra today, Chayei Sarah, Vayiyu Chayei Sarah. These were the life of Sarah, and the Sedra is called Chayei Sarah. Chief Rabbi Mervis last night in his tribute asked the question, why is it called Chayei Sarah? We don't hear anything about the life of Sarah, we hear about the death of Sarah, and yet it's called the life of Sarah. And of course there's the famous question which Rashi asks amongst others, why does the Pasuk split up her years? Vayiyu Chayei Sarah Mea Shana, 100 years, Ve'esrim Shana, and 20 years, B'Sheva Shanim, and 7 years. Why didn't it just say she lived 127 years? Why do we see it split up? Rashi, of course, famously says that each of the times of her life she was as good as the others. So at 20, she was at 100 she was as sin-free as she was at 20, and at 20 she was as beautiful as she was at 7. Ravido in his Dvar Torah this week uses this idea in a slightly different way and points out that perhaps the message is that we should use each of our times of our life, our tukufa, maybe our childhood, our adolescence, our adulthood, and our retirement. We should make the most of each day and not look to the future or pick apart the past too much. But I want to add something else to this, which I think is fitting for Rabbi Sacks. And Vayiyu Chayei Sarah. Why is it called Chayei Sarah, the life of Sarah, when really we hear about her death? And that's because she never died. She never died because her legacy lives on, because she is Sarah Imenu. She's Sarah, our mother. And why was it that her life has carried on and her legacy has carried on forever? And that's because that she was somebody that related to all people. She was Imenu, our mother. And this was Rabbi Sacks. Rabbi Sacks was the Rav of everybody. And the idea here in the Sedra of the 3 different periods of time, 100 years, 20 years, and 7 years, occurred to me that this was Rabbi Sacks. He was somebody who was obviously able to relate to the intellectual, to the 20-year-old students, those who had lofty ideals, the philosophers. When he was a don in university, he was able to relate to those. But what about the 7-year-old child? And what about the 100-year-old elderly person? How did Rabbi Sacks relate to them? Let me tell you a story, a true story, which none of you will know. A friend of mine from Manchester went to live in America some years ago. He was a teacher, and he went to teach in a school in Baltimore, Jewish school. He was teaching maths, and he was teaching in Kodesh Chumash. And every week on a Friday afternoon, he would go through the Sedra with his kids. I think his kids were in Kita Dalet, Kita Hey, 4th, 5th grade, something like that. And he would go through Rabbi Sacks's commentary on the Parsha and tell them something of the Parsha using Rabbi Sacks's commentary. And one day he said to the kids, wouldn't it be great if we were to write to Rabbi Sacks, perhaps with some questions and maybe get an answer from Rabbi Sacks to our questions. So let's do that. So the kids wrote questions out with the help of the teacher, this friend of mine, And he sent a message through to the office of Rabbi Sacks, who was chief rabbi at the time, asking if he, explaining that he was a teacher in America in a junior school, and these kids had these questions for Rabbi Sacks, and if he could spend some time just to give us an answer, that would be wonderful. I could read this answer out to the kids. And he did not receive a reply from the office of Rabbi Sacks. He did not receive a reply which he thought he would get, which was, thank you very much for your questions. Rabbi Sacks has looked at these and he's delighted that you're able to present his ideas to the children, and these are his answers to the children's questions. He didn't get that. He didn't also get a personal email from Rabbi Sacks saying, dear Mordechai, thank you for your email. I've thought about your kids' questions and these are my answers. He didn't get that either. But what he did get was a 30-minute video made by Rabbi Sacks, a 30-minute video where he read out each of one of the questions with the kid's name who'd asked the question, looked into the camera like I'm doing now, smiled, and gave an answer to every single kid. And that was Rabbi Sacks with the kids, because he went over and above that which he needed to do. Why? Because he knew that the kids were the most important part of our people, and that the kids were the continuity. You'll remember that Rabbi Sacks famously declared a decade of continuity, and that was him with the kids. Rabbi, I think it was Dan Binstock at the funeral, told the story that what he was most wanted to be remembered for when he got to Shamayim was not as being chief rabbi, and as not as being a global speaker for Judaism throughout the world, but he wanted to be known as the guy that gave out sweets to the kids in shul. That was Rabbi Sacks with the 7-year-olds. And what about the 100-year-olds as well? Rabbi Sacks, when he went to visit an elderly person, he didn't stand and talk to them while the person sat in their wheelchair. No, he crouched down so that he was at their level and could speak to them face to face at eye level. And he would put his hand on their hand, made no difference, man or woman. He put his hand on their hand, he looked into their eyes, and he gave that lovely smile, which you can see behind me here in this drawing. He gave that smile, and he looked into that old person's eyes, even if there was no recognition coming back the other way. Rabbi Sacks recognized that this was a person and tried at every point, whether it was with a 7-year-old child, a 20-year-old intellectual, or a 100-year-old elderly person. Rabbi Sacks was somebody who communicated and who cared about every single person. And if we were writing the Sedra here, this would say, Vayiyu Chayei HaRav Sacks. This is why Rav Sacks will live on. His legacy will live on because he cared about everybody. And we would say about him that he lived 72 years, but he lived, each of those years would be split up in the same way as Sarah. Sarah was transformed into Sarah Imenu. She was transformed into Sarah, our mother, by this living her life to the full in every single age. Rav Sacks transformed himself. He wasn't born Rav Sacks. He was born as an ordinary guy in an ordinary family. And as many people have said in the Hespedim, he had greatness thrust upon himself, and he chose greatness for himself. And the success that he had, and he turned himself into not just ordinary Jonathan Sacks. He turned himself into Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks, Morenu V'Rabbeinu, our teacher and our rabbi, the rabbi of all of us. We can all learn something from Rabbi Sacks, whether we're 7 years old, 20 years old, or 100 years old. We all have what to learn from Rabbi Sacks. We will remember him forever because his writings and his oratory is out there for all of us. He will be quoted for forever. And Vayiyu Chayei Sarah, Vayiyu Chayei HaRav Sacks. Yehi Zichro Baruch. Shabbat Shalom.